Well, hey everybody, good evening. I was hoping that I would be able to watch myself live on Facebook and interact, but I can't figure out how to do that. So I'm a little distance from the phone, so if you got specific questions, I probably won't see them. Thank you guys for coming. This will be short and sweet and informal. There's been a lot of interest in this over the past week or so, ever since the bombing in Nashville knocked out communication for several days across 4 different states. 911 included, AT&T and FirstNet, and then that actually turned into some additional cell phone companies having some issues as well. So good time to discuss a family communications plan. A family emergency communications plan is a little bitty piece of a much bigger plan that we can get into in another video. But today I just want to give you a brief intro into how to put this plan together and kind of tell you what we've been doing and give you all the resources up front, because sometimes this can get a little confusing. But if you think about the situation you had this week, especially if you had AT&T FirstNet or AT&T Internet and you couldn't reach the people you needed to reach, those are the kind of things we need to be planning to do, and that's what we do as preppers. So we'll get into some stuff tonight, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of resources to make it as easy as possible. So to start off, I wanted to say that I think that 2020 has given us a bunch of what I call mini disasters to kind of practice and evaluate our readiness. And tornadoes, the virus, empty store shelves, supply chain issues which continue till this day, unable to be with family, unable to communicate effectively with loved ones, riots, civil unrest, and like I said, very recently here, the bombing in Nashville. So a lot of things have happened where we've had to do some stuff different this year. A lot of people turned into preppers this year, maybe not publicly, but I know that many more families are prepared than what they used to be. So let's talk real quick about the Family Emergency Communications Plan. I'm going to post all of these links as a post on the Safe Prep Facebook page. Most of them have web addresses that are hyperlinked, so it'll take you directly to whatever I'm talking about. So lots of equipment and lots of resources. The first thing I'm going to send you is the Family Emergency Communication Plan template from FEMA. So as a very basic plan within your larger, what do we do if something bad happens? Do we bug in? Do we bug out? Are we just evacuating for 3 days because of weather or hazmat incident on the interstate? Is you have to know contact information for the people that you love and care for. If, say, you were to lose your cell phone, most of us don't memorize phone numbers anymore. We pick up a phone and hit a button and it calls that person. And if you're ever without that device, or if that device gets wet, or if the battery dies and you don't have your charger, you're not going to remember the phone number. So what this plan does is lets you put all this information on paper. So everybody in your household, all other contact information, and then additional contact information for folks that live in your area, that you have a pre-plan already to, if something happens here at my house, I'm going to my cousin's house, and this is their address. Because when things get stressful, our memories fail us sometimes, so be sure everything is written down. If you fill out this entire sheet from FEMA, all that information will be there. So what I would do is take that sheet that I'm referencing, and once you have filled that out, that needs to go on all of your packs, your bug out bags if you have them. Definitely stick one in the car, in the glove box. If you want to put one of those in your child's backpack, just keep that in there. That way you have multiple places to go to get that info should you ever need it. The other part of that plan is knowing within your household where you're going to go if you need to leave. So typically you want an in-town contact. So if something happens at my house, I can go to Susan's. I mean, Susan knows I'm going to bring my wife and my kids, and she's okay with that. And maybe a cat. So can't leave the cat. And then you need to have an out-of-town contact. That way, if it's a much larger disaster and there's a disaster at my house, there's a disaster at Susan's house, it's not safe to move between the two, then I probably need to get out of town. Where do we go? Where do we ever pre-plan with our family? Who's not going to mind if we just show up with a suitcase and stay for a week or two? Even one more contact that is actually further out. But at a minimum, you need to have a plan of where you're going to go, and that plan needs to be talked through, and it needs to be on paper. So if you fill that sheet out, it's going to give you all the resources and information that you need, and you're not going to miss anything. Also has information on poison control numbers, your doctor, medical insurance, pharmacy phone numbers, those kind of things. So at a bare minimum, this is a good something good to have. You can also make your own version of this, shrink it down. What I suggest is shrink something down smaller, maybe laminate it, or put it inside of a large gallon size freezer bag. That's going to protect it should it get wet in whatever situation, so that you always have that. So that will be one of the first things that's going to be linked, and it'll take you directly to the FEMA website. Moving on. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey in communication. I've always enjoyed radios and communication. That started at an early age, and I think it started probably with walkie-talkies as a kid. And then as I got older and got into an organization called Civil Air Patrol, which is an agency that has a cadet program. They focus on aerospace education and provide search and rescue for the Air Force. They have a communications program, and I got very involved in that. And that communication program is very similar to ham radio. So I did that, and then I've been on an ambulance for 20 plus years, so I've always talked on the radio in a public safety role. So I've always enjoyed that. I never went and got my ham radio license because I thought it was way too difficult and I was way too dumb. I always wanted to. Never really did the research on how dumb I thought I was or how hard the test was, but I just didn't think I was smart enough. So this year was my year of hobbies. Just ask my wife, and bless her heart, she's doing most of them with me now. So I love you, babe. She's downstairs watching. She's one of the two people watching, probably. So I started doing some research on it, and there are ways to go about it if you're not smart like I am. So let me tell you what ham radio is. So ham radio is also called amateur radio. So it's basically a part of the airwaves that are dedicated to FCC or Federal Communications Commission licensed individuals, and these are called ham radio operators or amateur radio operators. There are 3 levels, and you test for each level. The first level is technician, the second level is general, and the third level is amateur extra, and you have to test in that order. So the testing only costs $15. If you pass your technician test, they're going to ask you, hey, you want to go ahead and test for your general and see if you pass? If you do, you do. You don't, you don't. But you paid $15, you can test all day. Or if you fail, you can pay them another $15 and take the test over again, and who knows, you might get it. So once you've passed that test, you're issued an FCC amateur radio call sign. And that is specific to every radio operator that's out there. So mine is KO4HPJ, based on, part of that number is based on where I live at in the country. So that's my individual radio call sign. And you can change those too. There's a process for that if you don't like the one you get. So here is what I did, and everybody studies and learns and tests different. So what I did is I had watched several videos that said, and let me tell this story first. I passed paramedic school a long time ago, but I didn't get good at being a paramedic till after I was working on the ambulance. and that's the case for most of us. I wanted to get my test, because you have to pass your test and get your license before you can talk on amateur radio. Amateur radio is legal for anybody to listen to, but if you key up on an amateur radio frequency, you've broken the law. So what I did is went to a website called Ham Radio Prep, and I think it was $25 for the technician level. I've got that linked. We're trying to partner with them. But basically, you start off at the technician level for $25 or whatever they're charging now. And it's 10 modules that you take at your own pace. Basically, here's how the test is broken down. It is a bank of questions from last year, I think 2019, up until 2022. There's a bank of this many questions that are on the test, and all of those questions are public. Okay? And the answers, and the wrong answers. They don't even try to fool you. So, if you're good at memorizing, there are ways to pass your test quickly, get into ham radio, get your first radio, and start learning. Because ideally what you want to do is get your ham radio license. Even if you don't know anything about it, go pass the test, get your radio, and then you join a local amateur radio club. So I'm a member of Stones River Amateur Radio Club. And it's even been difficult for me this year to learn from what we call Elmers. Elmers are older, more experienced, not necessarily older, but definitely more experienced ham radio operators that are willing to help an individual that doesn't know as much about them. Like with a lot of volunteer organizations, there are a whole lot of people in ham radio that want you to get into ham radio. It just makes it cooler for us, and we get to meet and talk to more people. So it's a cool clique to be a part of, I think. So hamradio.com, take the 10 module 25 question. What I'm calling that is your orientation. It kind of paints you a big picture. It gives you the lesson. Everything in blue is a test question, the answer to a test question. So from start to finish, trying to learn to pass this test, you're starting to memorize what the correct answer is, because you'll see it again later. So at the end of that 10 modules, and I think I did it in a couple of hours, start to finish. My wife started yesterday. She gets it now. She's caught a little bit of the bug, and I want to be able to talk to her easily if something happens. Now, if it's an emergency situation or it's a life and death situation, anybody can pick up a ham radio and start talking. FCC's not going to come get you. It's a little bit of a gray area, but if it's life and death, it don't matter. But if you don't know how to work a ham radio and understand simplex and duplex and repeaters, that is not the time to realize that you're inexperienced with a ham radio. You want to know what you're doing. So that's why you get your license, join a club, learn what you're doing, and then when you need it, you've got it. So at the end of that 10 modules, it's going to start giving you practice tests, and that's what you're going to be doing up until the point that you do test. So you test and you test and you test, and hamradioprep.com will tell you, once there's a guarantee, once you make a certain grade on their practice test, if you go and take the ham radio exam and you don't pass, they will pay for your exam fee. Okay? So I'm telling you, my score started off in the 50s. And I just kept retaking the test because it's the same questions. It's a bank of questions this long. You're not going to get all of them. If there's 8 questions in this section, you're only going to get 2 of them. If it's 20 questions out of this section of the test, you're only going to get 3 of them. So you've got to kind of memorize all of them, but you're only going to see 1 or 2 questions from that test. So 10 modules, and then take your practice test with ham radio prep. Now, something that I did to supplement and that I truly give credit to is a free app, and I've linked that, and it's ham radio tech, I think. I've linked it so you can find it, and I'm pretty sure it's on the iPhone platform as well. So what it is it's got the same bank of questions in it. So there's different ways that you can study. Free app, you can study correct answers. It's going to give you the question and 4 answers. One of those questions is going to be marked green because it's the right answer. Click on the green one. You go to the next one. It gives you the exact question, the exact wrong answers, and the exact right answers. You keep taking that until you start to form a memory of what the correct answer is to the question. So after you have studied through that, you go and take a practice test within that app. And you watch, you take practice. I can't tell you how many practice. I did this in a week and a half. Start to finish. A week and a half. I would be at work. We weren't running calls. And I would just take practice test after practice test after practice test till my thumbs hurt. And I got to take my test on a Saturday in Murfreesboro. And I missed one question. And they said, you want to take your general now? I'm like, because I ain't studying. I'll come back and do that later. So I passed my ham radio test when I thought I was too dumb to. So what I would do is do the ham radio prep, pay the money, get your score good there, practice there. It's more of an internet platform, probably easier on a computer. But that app that this guy, it's a ham radio operator that developed it, and it's free, will get you through the test. So that's how to get your ham license. Okay, you got to get your technician license. Let me explain a little bit how ham radio is broken down. Like I said, it's licensed by the FCC. That's who will give you your call sign. Call signs are your license good for like 10 years, so it's not like get or do. So the FCC does require a license to transmit technician, general, amateur, extra. I'll get there one day. I'm fine right now. What do those classifications mean? Technician, general, amateur, extra. The more of a license level, somebody that's a general can talk on more frequencies and more bands than a technician can, which means that a person with a general or an amateur extra can talk to people around the world and regionally and around the country based on the way those frequencies work than a technician can. So don't just stop at technician, keep going, especially if you're looking at it from a survival or preparedness, because the higher you go up in the levels of licensure, the more frequencies and the further you're going to be able to transmit based on whatever your equipment is. So there's simplex, which is talking radio to radio. Basically, that is line of sight. So, if I can see you and you can see me and there's not a huge mountain in the middle of us, we're probably going to be able to talk radio to radio on the same frequency. Now, you've got repeaters, which is we're lucky where we live, there's repeaters all over the place. What a repeater does is you got a radio person here and a radio person here. And say my big old head is the repeater. This person wants to talk to this person. So this person keys up on the repeater frequency and the signal goes up here, and the repeater takes that signal, and sometimes it retransmits it on the same frequency, sometimes it retransmits it on a different frequency. But it takes that signal from here to here. That's what a repeater does. A repeater is going to be reliable if there's a crap at the fan event. Most repeaters are privately owned. Some of those guys get pretty heavy into preparedness. So a lot of them have backup generator power or alternate power sources, but eventually the repeaters are probably going to fail. But depending on what level of licensure you have, you're going to be able to talk to people at least regionally based on the frequencies and the licensure that you have. So choose your date. So I've got a link in here to the ARRL, which is the National Organization for Ham Radio Operators. It'll take you directly to the search for a testing date, and you just type in whatever city you're at, and it will tell you when the next testing dates are and where. So they're FCC licensed guys that are doing these tests. What I would suggest with all the coronavirus stuff going on is that you call the number that's listed under that testing site and confirm that it's at that location and they're still doing testing. We tested several months ago, and we tested outside. We weren't even allowed in the church building they meet at. So just call to confirm before you go. But set your date. Give yourself a goal. Okay? I'm going to be ready by this date. Ham radio prep, study your butt off on that app until you're making 90 and above. And then when you go take the test, there's no way you're going to fail it. It's really that easy. So I'm going to go down to some of the other additional links that I'm going to send out. If you don't learn that way, I'm a good memorizer. If I see something enough, I'll memorize it. That's what paramedics do, is memorize things. But if you're more of a book person, there are books I've got listed in these links. So you can get those books. The books are from the same bank of questions. Everybody all over the country is getting the same bank of questions. So the books work too. That's just not the route I went. And I still, if you know it, you know it. I passed the test on, electrical theory and electrical components. That was the scary stuff for me, and that stuff still, I'm not building radios. I just want to talk on them, but you have to have a base knowledge. So the book can help you with that. So, ham radio does not have to be expensive, okay? Ham radio can be very expensive if you want it to, very easily. I'm not ready to spend that kind of money yet. We came at this basically from, hey, I wanted to be a ham radio operator my whole life, and came at it from the direction of this would be a great tool to have for our family if something bad were to happen. So, this is a radio that I have had for years, and if you see, I've got several radios behind me. Go through some of them real quick. Very important that everybody has one of these in their house, okay? It's the weather radios. These are programmed with same codes. So the National Weather Service basically has their own frequencies. When a warning goes out for your area, for the frequency that this is set to, that goes off and wakes you up. If your cell phone battery died or your power's out, for whatever reason, if your county gets warned or your portion of the county gets warned, that thing's going to go off. Get you a weather radio and have one in the bedroom, okay? So these radios right here, you see these for camping and hunting. So there's basically these are they have their own frequencies. You can't change the frequencies on these. You can just go from channel 1 to channel 2 to channel 3. That frequency is programmed basically the same in every single radio you buy. The FCC license what portion of the band these radios can be used in. These aren't ham radios, but these are good to have, and we keep these in our go packs. Same thing right here, just a little cheaper version. You can get these at any camping store, get them at Walmart, guys. All right. Ham radio does not have to be expensive. I have had this radio for 10 years, and I hadn't been in ham that long. But interoperability was not always a thing with EMS, fire, and police. We don't always know what the other agencies are doing, and sometimes we want to know. So when I worked at one of my jobs, if we were going to a call, I'd flip over and listen to what PD was doing on it. I would know more when I got there and hopefully do my job better. This is a Baefung radio. These are Chinese made. They're not they're not top quality ham radio equipment. But if you are wanting to get started and you're having trouble talking your wife into letting you buy something, waiting on her to hit a broom against the roof downstairs, these are cheap. I think the one that I've got listed in these links is about $22. I am not kidding. So there are several different models of this. It's a Baofung UV5R. It's a 5-watt radio, VHF, UHF, and you can transmit and operate on 2 separate bands. So this is not the antenna that it came with. This is a Nagoya 771. This thing was under $16 and has been a great antenna for everything that I've needed it for. So you get into a car, you can't get into a vehicle and just get on your ham radio because the vehicle shields the signal. So when I get in my truck, I have an antenna that I have, it's a magnet mount antenna on top of the truck, got the wires running inside, and I hook it in to the adapter right here. And that way I can monitor my ham radio when I'm driving down the road. Even got my call sign on the back window in case anybody wants to talk. So I can meet people. So Baefung UV5R, this is your cheap route to go. I have been very pleased, at least in my area, with the amount of repeaters and the amount of information I can get. Granted, we live just outside of Nashville. I'm having trouble with my mic. New equipment. We got some fancy new stuff. I'm going to link this UV5R, good radio to get started, and then learn what you're doing, and then get you something better if you enjoy ham radio, okay? Now, if one person in the radio's got a house, I don't know how good that does on your preparedness plan, okay? Whoever you want to talk to's got to have a radio too, and they've got to have it with them, and they got to have a way to power it, and they got to know how to use it. So if one of you wants to get started in ham radio and then kind of coach the other one in, that's fine. But man, it's a great way to be prepared. You can program the Baofungs on your own with a cable. I have that cable linked, and what I will send out is a post here shortly. And I will also send out the free software. It's a software download called Chirp, and you can download to that computer. Pretty simple to learn, pretty self-explanatory. You can go into your county, your state, your county, and it will have your repeaters listed. You can download and change the programming in your radio much quicker through Chirp than you can on the keypad of this radio. A million YouTube videos on people who love and people who hate Baofeng. So Chinese, not the best ham radio equipment. I've got the magnetic antenna that I use on my truck listed in here. It has been very good as well. I've listed a more expensive radio. This radio right here is a analog radio, basically working on an FM frequency. Digital radio is something I will eventually get into when I feel like spending enough money on a AnyTone that I've got linked right here. That'll probably be my next radio. Digital radio, basically, how do I explain it? It's a digital radio, and you basically use an interface Wi-Fi that lets you talk through your ham radio all over the world using this internet cell phone Wi-Fi system. Through your computer, you can talk all over the world, and actually even those of us at the technician level have some access to that. So if you really want to meet some people and talk to some folks that aren't necessarily from around here, getting you a digital radio is what you want to do. If you're ready to spend that money now, go ahead and get you something a little more expensive. Like I said, 25 bucks, an extra antenna, a ton of accessories. You can get whatever you want, a little speaker mic there. But just to get started and learn, get you something cheap. Do have the AnyTone listed if you guys want to check that out. And I think I made it through just about everything. And what I want y'all to take away from that is that number one, ham radio is a hobby. Hobbies are cool. Okay, expensive hobbies are really cool when ham get expensive if you want it to. I like it as a preparedness option for my family. When communication was down the other day, here's the other thing. If your internet at home and your cell phone are the same company, when something happens with that company, you're not going to have anything. And a lot of people are limited by where they live as to what service and prices and all that. But we have Xfinity Wi-Fi at the house. So I can Wi-Fi call on my phone through my Xfinity upstairs. So we could use Facebook Messenger, and we could call each other from the Wi-Fi as long as we were connected to Wi-Fi. So if you have the opportunity to work on your plan, and you can have two separate companies, one for home and one for your mobile, that might be a little better idea. So yeah, it's a hobby. It's great for preparedness. If something happened right now, my wife has a radio, I have a radio. We can communicate as long as we're not too far apart, or if we're in range of a repeater, and that we have practiced the plan that we're going to use. What time of the hour are we going to call each other? If you're trying to call somebody immediately after a disaster, and you call and call and call and call and call and call and call, you're just adding to the problem. Only call each other, say, between the top of the hour and 8:05, and do that every hour, and have that in your plan. When your battery on your phone, and you don't have a charger, when the battery on your phone gets below 50%, turn your phone on airplane mode. It will stop searching for a signal, and that will save your battery. So there's all sorts of, like I said, everything's part of a bigger plan. This is a very basic emergency family communications plan. What we do at Safe Prep is put these plans together for families at an affordable price. We want to do for you what we do for our family. This is fun for me. I've been in public safety my whole life, and we're really excited about what we're doing. So I will put all these notes out on the Facebook post. What can you do to help me? If you guys would share our page, if you would recommend our Facebook page, if you would subscribe and like to the videos on our YouTube. We're looking to move to some additional platforms as well. We want to know what you guys want to see, and if you need help, you have our contact info. For those of you that tuned in this evening, I appreciate it. Hope the audio and video wasn't too awful. I'm still learning how to do this, so I'll go watch this and critique myself for the next 2 hours. Until then, y'all be prepared. Now I'm going to get up and walk over there and hit end on the thing. Give us a call if you need us.